as well.
Yeah, we want to hear from you, but right now what we really want to do is we want to head down to the stage so we can get our first feature match ready. We're showing you all 9 rounds today, so let's go and get ready for our first game. As we look at our players, we've got Yasayuki Handa against Tord Reklev. One of those players you are going to be very familiar with, but Yasayuki playing that Arcaladon deck, and this is going to be a fun and interesting match. I wonder if anybody figured out what that card from Prismatic Evolutions is yet.
Yeah, maybe there's a chance, but make sure you're commenting as well, maybe trying to figure it out. But both of these players, it's incredible to hear. I mean, we've already mentioned, Tord last week was playing in Japan and has come all the way back to Europe to again compete in the European International Championships. Yasayuki's here with his 2 children also competing in the tournament as well. And it's just incredible to have this opportunity to bring, you know, different worlds together, making it all collide all the way from Australia against one of the best players in the world in Tord Reklev. But, I mean, is this a chance for Yasayuki to make a name for himself, Ross?
Oh, absolutely. If you take down one of the best players in the world on stream and internationals, that is a big deal. Tord's come from Norway. That's moderately far. Yasayuki's come from Australia. I've done the flight from Australia to London. It's a long flight. That is a long flight, but if you can come here, round 1, bring your Arcaladon Dialga, and, you know, get that win against one of the best players in the world, one of the best players we've ever seen, frankly, that is going to be impressive. And yes, we do have an impressive new LED display behind the players. So, you know, try and spot your favorite Pokemon when that's on screen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still waiting for mine, Ross, but I won't give it away yet. We'll see how it goes. As our players are still obviously just readying up alongside our judges. Both of these players, you know, Tord's obviously well-versed in playing on stream in this position. He's done it many, many times before. After all, he is currently looking to try and defend his title at this European International Championships here in 2025, as both players are starting to set out their prizes now as well. We get a little glimpse into some of the deck itself, as we do see a Crispin being played in Tord's side of the field. Nothing too crazy. There's that Iron Bundle there. Is that for Yasayuki?
Yeah, 1 Archaladon, but I think 1 Archaladon is going to be fine. You're going to be all right with that. Tord's deck list, by the way, is another one of those. It's a very Tord list.
Yes.
There are lots and lots of different options in here. It's a straight Dragapult. So it's not Dragapult Charizard, it's not Dragapult Iron Thorns, which are decks we're very familiar with. It is straight Dragapult, in that is your main attacker, but it is a Tord deck. There are lots of different options, lots of tricks that Tord can bring up here. It is not a straightforward deck because Tord doesn't play straightforward decks. Essentially, when you get to that level of play like Tord, you find you have more complicated deck lists, and it's very much I'm giving myself a lot of options, and I'm going to outplay you, rather than just my deck is going to be super consistent and always set up and I'm going to win that way. It is about I'm giving myself the options to outplay you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Yasayuki's, I mean, with the Archaladon deck list that he's piloting as well, alongside the Orange Form Dialga V, it's going to be really interesting to see how he's going to navigate as our players are now kicking off our round 1 of the European International Championships here. Looks like it's that Dreepy and that Duraludon in the active. It looks like Yasayuki is going first here, Ross.
Yeah, we got Duraludon in the active, we got Dreepy in the active. They are oftentimes the cup you're going to want in the active nice and early. So we got that first nest ball coming out. There we go. And the question here essentially is, what cards are in my prizes? 6 cards go from your deck to your prizes at the beginning of the game. Those cards are unavailable until you draw them by knocking out opposing Pokemon. So you need to know which cards are unavailable so you can navigate through the rest of the game. While we got a second, this Archaladon deck. It's nice and simple. You evolve into Archaladon.
Yep.
It accelerates Metal Energy. You attack with Archaladon. It is big. It does lots of damage. But you've also got Dialga there.
Yes, exactly. That's Orange Form Dialga V-Star. Once you're able to evolve it into the V-Star, of course, it has a fantastic attack. V-Star Power, Star Chronos, being able to almost cheat the game. You get to take an extra turn after dealing 220 damage. Does require 5 energies, of course. But this is an opportunity to really weave in a really impressive attacker. So we do see here Yasayuki's utilizing his support Pokemon, that Radiant Greninja on the bench. Does have that concealed cards ability, being able to pitch away 1 Metal Energy to kind of combo and synergize with the Archaladon EX here, as we do get the energy attachment to the active and a pass over. Generally okay with this. there's not really any way for Tord to donk this take the knockout on this Duraludon here.
Yeah, you got your energy attachment, you got your Duraludon ready to evolve up next turn. That was your real goal. Having a Dialga V down just to give you an option would have been nice, but it's not the end of the world. And here's the thing, right? Turn 1 Luminion from Tord. One of the things you pointed out looking at Tord's list, double Luminion. When a player plays 2 Luminion, you never actually want to play 2 Luminion, really. That is I am so desperate for this card turn 1, I am not willing for it to be prized. I am going to have access to it. And look, yes, it can come out later in the game, but it is I have got to have it. Well, we got a second, Dragapult. In theory, a straightforward deck. You evolve up into your Strays 2 Dragapult. You do 200 to the active while dropping 6 damage counters on the bench anywhere you like. And oh yeah, Drakloak has got a built-in draw engine as well.
Yep, Recon Directive. Once during your turn, you may look up to 2 cards of your top 2 cards of your deck and put one of them into your hand. The other goes to the bottom. As we do see the Arven being picked up here from that Lumineous Sign ability as well. Grabbing that that Buddy Poffin, being able to grab 2 basic Pokemon with 70 HP or lower. And that's just an opportunity for Tord to set up the board. And this is where we were speaking about the type of decks that Tord is playing. The double Luminium V just wants to make sure that he has access to those really critical supporters when he needs them. He's playing the Arvens, he's playing Lance, he's playing that Crispin that we had a little glimpse into in the prizes a little bit earlier there as well, as we do see the double Dreeby hit the board here. And Tord's going to be, generally, as long as you have your board set up in a way where you can have the Drakloaks being able to sort of continue draw through the deck, have that consistency, he's going to generally be pretty happy with himself.
Yeah, and you may have noticed that Lance popping out there. There's a full 4 copies in the deck. Searches out 3 dragon Pokemon right now. That's not a dragon Pokemon, though. That is a Badoo, that big new card from Prismatic Evolutions. Itchy Pollen, single energy, 10 damage. And Yasayuki here not allowed to play item cards from their hand during this turn. Badoo is the big story from Prismatic Evolutions. It grinds the game down to a halt and says to your opponent, you've got abilities and you've got supporter cards. Let's hope you can set up with that, because if you can't, if you want to use an Ultra Ball to get your Archaludon, got it, you can't. Want to use a Switch to get another Pokemon in the active? Got it, you can't. I could keep going. I think you get the point.
Absolutely, as we do see the Iono being played here from Yasayuki. So a fresh new 6 after putting all the cards in his hand to the bottom there. Both players doing it in this turn, of course. But generally, when you're playing a deck like Archaludon, it's one of those few decks which actually doesn't need too much to get going after one turn of maybe being able to use your items. And that's sometimes one of the big things about this sort of Budgie format, or this threat of the Budgie with the Itchy Pollen, that it can handle it. But at the moment, Yasayuki's having to sort of recollect himself here and just try and figure out a way to navigate this turn, because after a concealed cards, he still hasn't really instantly played anything. As we do see, is that a Dialga V?
There's a Dialga going down onto the bench. We haven't seen an energy attachment yet this turn, although there is one in hand, but without getting the Archaludon. So you attach it to the Dialga, and it's worth noting that Archaludon accelerates 2 energy to itself, so you can get the next 2 energy you need. Right now, good news is, how much damage does Hammerin do?
30, Ross, and that's ideal against a little Budgie with 30 HP. Hammerin is a way to take the knockout here. I guess with Yasayuki, he'll be thinking, oh no, if there's a way or there's a world where Tord could potentially evolve straight up into Dragapult, take the knockout here, I actually won't have access to an Archaludon. But for the moment, has chosen just not to actually take the knockout here, and has chosen not to hammer in that Budgie, giving Tord another opportunity to kind of build out his board.
Well, here's the interesting thing. These decks, these Dragapult decks, generally play Sparkling Crystal. Tord is not. Tord is playing Unfair Stamp, which puts you down to a 2-card hand after you take a KO. So if Tord had Unfair Stamp or access to it, taking a KO would be brutal. Generally, we expect Dragapult to be playing Sparkling Crystal, but if Yasayuki is suspecting the Unfair Stamp, that would be a reason not to take that little KO. It's not advancing your prize map too well, and it could really come back to hurt you.
That would be a crazy read, despite not
That would be
no
such a
information available. But you never know. Maybe Yasayuki has played up against a Dragapult with unfair stamp. As we do see Tord going through the motions here. Arvin hitting field once again, picks up that one rare candy that Tord is currently playing in his list, and he's rare candying straight into that Dragapult EX. All the sort of tools are coming down as well. Forest Sealstone on that Luminium V, popped off. Star Alchemy utilized. V-Star used, so Tord's really looking to get going here. Budu, of course, is one of those few cards that allows you to kind of maneuver around quite easily, Ross.
Yeah, it really does. And you're trying to buy time here, right? And actually, worth pointing out, Tord plays a single rare candy in his deck. That's the only one he has access to, so we know we're not seeing another Dragapult coming out in that way. But the attack here, 200 to the active, which would be enough to KO a Duraludon. 6 damage counters on the bench. That would also be kind of nice. Tord is setting up well. There is that second energy that we needed for the Dragapult. But Do has free retreat, so here comes the Dragapult. And crucially now, we are not seeing an Archaludon next turn. There is no Duraludon ready to evolve. Buying that one turn with Budu here was huge for Tord. And now Yasayuki in a bad position with no Archaludon ready to come out. And even if you want to attack with Dialga, you kind of need to accelerate energy with Archaludon first.
Yeah, it looks like a little bit of the worst fears that could have happened on Tord's turn on Yasuyuki's side, because it was just that one Duraludon that was available, and it's just that Dialga, Origin Form Dialga V in the active spot now. No Duraludons available, no Archaludon EX is available, so now he's just in a bit of a sticky position, and Tord's in a very commanding position here because he's been able to take the massive knockout with that Dragapult EX. And one of the most important things is just trying to start to place the damage counters of the Phantom Dive as well. So he's decided to spread the damage 4 and 2 across the Radiant Greninja and the Dialga V as well. So here, as Yasayuki is just looking to try and play out his turn. He does have access to items now. But again, as we mentioned, no Duraludon, and that's one of the biggest things. We do get a peek, Ross,
we do
of that one card. What is it?
It is Black Belt's Training, lets you do an extra 40 damage. It helps fix some numbers for you. It's a card, it's only played as a one-off, but 40 more to an active EX. It is a fun little card. Now, if you're wondering about the damage from Dragapult, oh look, Dialga happens to have exactly 200 HP left. How much is the general damage from Phantom Dive?
Yeah, 200.
Exactly works out nicely. So what Tord essentially did there was bring the Dialga down into range of a Phantom Dive and put the rest on Dragapult for later. Not terribly relevant now, but could be as we go later on in the game. Tord very much in a good position here, and really Yasayuki needs, I mean, honestly, just getting a Dialga V-Star just to bring it out of range of a Phantom Dive would be a big deal here.
Yeah, it's just what can be done in this scenario. He's staring down at this Dragapult with the double energies on it already. Still hasn't really seen too much within Tord's deck list. I mean, he's only really seen 2 Arvins. As we do see the Professor Churro scenario from Yasayuki there, picking up that Dialga V, just kind of removing it back out of range, having to put that Radiant Greninja in the active spot. Only 90 HP left, so very susceptible to sort of just be easily knocked out. And maybe Tord's going to find an opportunity to just kind of reset up damage across the board.
Yeah, we see a Relicanth coming down onto the bench, but that unfortunately is not going to do too much. That's basically used so that Archaludon can copy Duraludon's attack to do damage based on the damage counters on it. It's not really going to do much from this position. And that Professor Turo scenario, all it really did was heal 20 damage off Dialga and switch it to the bench. Not the most efficient use of your supporter. But we do see a Drakloak coming down here using Recon Directive, getting a second Drakloak to use a second Recon Directive. Can we get a third? No, because there's no Dreepy on the bench.
As we do, yep, exactly that. That Recon Directive here, just kind of showcasing for Tord just the consistency levels of the kind of pre-built-in engine that Dragapult EX actually gets just from its evolution line. As we do see one of those very unique cards we don't often see in previous formats, but Lance has really come to the fore here because he is playing a straight Dragapult EX deck. It's all, well, generally all Dragon-type Pokemon. You get to search your deck for up to 3 Dragon Pokemon, so it can be those Recon Directive Drakloaks, it could be your Dragapult EXs, it could be your Dreepies. But this is an opportunity for you to just be able to pick those cards out of your deck and get them evolved and really just get going.
And it's a great way of saying to your opponent, I don't really care if I'm under Badoo lock. I'm going to get free Dreepy down. I'm going to use Lance to get free Drakloak down. I got free Recon Directive. My deck is rolling. That's not where we are at this particular turn, but it is an option for the future. We do see the KO there on that Radiant Greninja. So Tord there takes a second KO, and now we are in a great position for Tord. Yasayuki, there isn't even a Duraludon down, so there's no Archaludon coming this turn.
Yeah, does have options here. In that hand, we do see the Fortin there as well. So could potentially go into Duraludon, get an attachment, maybe evolve up into the Archaludon EX, and then actually start swinging away. The one tricky scenario here is it too little, too late? Towards down to his 4 prizes now as instead of Yasayuki 6, as we do see the Night Stretcher for the Radiant Greninja. Does want to see more cards. Opts to go for the Iono just because maybe didn't have the Archaludon in a hand as well to try and protect it, to evolve up. But the support Pokemon's there, but we're not really seeing any Archaludons.
No.
Ross.
And that's what you would have needed. You would have needed the Fortin, but then also you need the Archaludon, and then you need a third energy in order to actually start attacking. And even then, you're 2-hit KOing Dragapult. You're not actually taking any prizes now. The game just ends up being very, very slow at that point, and you're already 2 prizes down. But it's not just about the prize cards, it's about the board state. Tord has got 2 Drakloak with Recon Directive. He's got the Dragapult in the active, ready to go, but he's got an energy on one of his benched Drakloak. So he's going to be attacking next turn with a minimum of effort.
Yeah, this is going to be one of the trickiest spots here. We've just seen Yasuyuki count out his energies in his discard pile. There was 5, I believe, in there. 1 is attached to the Dialga V on the bench. And actually, if you recall back to have a quick look at those prizes, I believe 3 of those metal energies were prized, as we do get a backup on the board for you guys at home to be looking at this alongside us as well. So there'll be no targets available from that Earthen Vessel, and there's going to be no way to actually even Fortin into an Archaludon EX to actually start swinging away. We do see, though, one of those very unique cards, another unique support Pokemon, Pheasantipity EX has hit the field.
Yeah, it's got that flip the script ability. If you had a Pokemon code last turn, you get to draw an extra 3 cards, which is what we see happening here by virtue of the Radiant Greninja having been KO'd. And that's the thing about this deck, right? You don't need to worry too much about having too much energy in the discard because Archaludon gets it out of the discard. But the problem is, if you don't have your Archaludon and you've got 1/3 of your energy prize, then you end up in an awkward situation. We see an Ultra Ball for a Duraludon. Next turn, we might be able to see an Archaludon, but Tord's got another turn of attacking before we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's the only way to actually get a Archaludon EX powered up right now is having to evolve up 2 to be able to use that fantastic Assemble Alloy ability to get at least 3 energies on an attacker to start swinging away. But Tord, I'm sure, after seeing an Earthen Vessel already being pitched away with no energies sort of taken out of the deck, Tord's got to be thinking, well, if I just take out one of these Archaludons, I'm going to be in an even better spot because there's no way to get like an energy attachment on.
No, that gives it a game away. There's no way Tord will have missed that. We see a second energy coming onto that bench Drakloak. All it needs to do is evolve, and it is ready to attack. We see a boss's orders onto that Dialga V, which, of course, does have those 2 damage counters on. Tord put them there deliberately twice this game so far, exactly to bring it into Phantom Dive range. And I believe that Relicanth is also in just enough range, so we could see a free prize turn here if Tord wants, but of course, that Relicanth, it's not the big target. You go after the more useful Pokemon here, some damage on Pheasantipity and some damage onto Radiant Greninja, who is now in range of... Yeah, no, not quite in range, but will be very soon.
No, the way Tord set this up, Ross, to kind of help out our viewers at home as well. The 10 damage on the Pheasantipity brings it within the 200 because there's 2 remaining prizes. But also, by putting the damage counters, I don't think it really mattered too much. But as long as that Relicanth is within range of a 60 from the Phantom Dive, he can gust up with a boss's orders or another way of kind of bringing up another single prizer and just put the last remaining 6 damage counters on that as well. So there's ways and around this. Tor does also have access to Radiant Alakazam to manipulate damage, and that's another way to kind of just ensure he can take maybe his final 2 prizes with 1 more turn remaining. But of course, Yasayuki is going to be doing everything he can to try and limit what Tord will be able to do.
Yeah, Tord has really set up multiple win conditions here. And we notice, you know, the Pheasant Dipty is exactly what Tord did against the Dialga here. It is, I'm going to leave something that gives up 2 prizes with 200 HP remaining, because that's the amount of damage a Phantom Dive does. I mean, right now, Tord can KO anything that's 1 prize with Relicanth on the bench, or KO Pheasant Dipty with Relicanth on the bench. And Yasayuki here puts an Archaludon in the active, gets 2 energy, but where's the 3rd one coming from? Oh, a nice stretcher, actually. And we are finally going to see Yasayuki getting an attack off, doing some damage here. Is it going to be too little, too late, as we see a jamming tower hit the board?
Yeah, this is the first Assemble Alloy of the weekend, ladies and gentlemen, and also likely to be the first Metal Defender attack. 220 damage with 3 Metal Energies attached. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon has no weakness. Not as relevant in this matchup right here, right now, but dealing 220, being a big tanky Pokemon with a lot of HP, 300 HP to try and get through, and then loads of ways to kind of reset that damage as well. This is the game plan, typically, of what we see for Chaludon EX.
And you're a stage 1 that's 2-hit KOing against a stage 2 that's 2-hit KOing, although admittedly with all that bench damage. If you get going early and get the first attack, that's how you can have a decent chance in this matchup. But with Tord already being 4 prizes up before you launch your first attack, there is Boss's orders. Anything that comes active means that Tord wins the game. You KO the Pheasant Dipty, or you KO something else with a residual damage on the Relicanth. We don't know what Tord picked. It doesn't matter. There were many different routes to victory. Whichever one Tord took, he is 1 game up in our round 1 feature match.
Yeah, incredible sort of display of his deck list working super well. Super consistent, being able to use Lumineon to get those key supporters in those early turns. We've seen Drakloak being able to push Tord into a position where he just has a strong level of consistency, and he has that red candy to kind of burst into an attacker and start swinging away, really applying a lot of pressure on Yasayuki's board. And, you know, with that one Burdew turn, 1 Itchy Pollen, that was more than enough to really slow the game down.
Yeah, the 1 Badoo was just absolutely, that 1 turn really brought Tord the 1 turn he needed to absolutely get rolling. Here is our replay. We see Yasayuki there, you know, laughing at the start of the game, having a lot of fun. Unfortunately, it did not go his way. Dragapult comes out early, KOs the Duraludon, and we see Tord from the very beginning of the game. I am leaving something with 200 HP so I can KO it with Phantom Dive. Takes those first prizes, and we see Yasayuki's response there.
Yeah, absolutely. But in good spirits, of course, knowing the game's kind of getting away from him as Tord's kind of being able to just keep wiping out the right Pokemon at the right time, setting up the board states in a position where Tord only needs to win sort of effectively 4 attacks at this point, because he has to go through 2 single prizes, but the back-to-back Boss's orders being able to utilize and get Tord the first win of this European International Championships. As we do see now, our player's going to be setting up for Game 2.
Now, the good news for Yasayuki here is you get to go first if you so wish. And in theory, you have a turn, Tord has a turn where he can't evolve. Then you get your Archaludon and you start putting on big pressure from the 2nd turn. If that's what happens, we see a very different Game 2. And we actually see a very different starting pair. Hawlucha for Tord, not what you want to start with. But Radiant Greninja, Yasayuki was going to play it at some point anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember how important that ability concealed cards is to get those energies into the discard pile to synergize with that Archaludon EX's Assemble Alloy ability here. As remember here, first deck search, an opportunity for Yasayuki to work out what those prizes are. We have an opportunity to showcase what those prizes are. We have great caster cam here alongside the viewers to see. It's just 2 energies. Again, not the 3 that he had before in the first game.
2 energies not great. We saw 3 energy being prized being an issue in Game 1. Having 2 energy prized is a pain. And I hope we can see Tord's prizes quickly here, because this is going to back up something I said a minute ago. Why did I say Tord needed to play 2 Lumineon?
Oh, because one is currently sleeping away in those prizes as well. But don't forget, there's also that one-off rare candy, Ross.
Oh.
So we're not going to be bursting into a Dragapult EX anytime soon.
No.
But it's interesting to kind of also see what Tords actually started with. That Hawlucha there in the active spot. Another one of those little tech cards that he's utilized here. As we do see this time round, Yasayuki with double Duraludon on the field.
Yeah, no Dialga V. Again, I always want to see a Dialga V early to give the option for Dialga V Star, but those two Duraludon nice and early is good. Standard. Turn 1 Arven from Tord here. I think there's a decent chance we see a Buddy Poffin coming out.
Yeah, this is the one way again to set up. Did have Lance in hand for a future turn. You know, typically you want to try and use it for things like the Dragcloaks and the Dragapults just to kind of get into the more consistency periods and just use your Buddy Poffins early to try and get those Dreepy downs instead, you know, really getting as much value out of your cards as possible. As we do see the Buddy Poffin coming down here, are we going to see the Burdew again, Ross?
Oh, we could see Badoo. Do we want to go one Dreepy? Yeah, we do, because Badoo's too good. Yeah, we saw Badoo last game, and Tord knows there's two Duraludon on the bench. If Yasayuki has energy, Archaludon, and then some energy in the discard to accelerate, that is going to go very downhill very quickly for Tord. You need to try and slow your opponent down, and in the Prismatic Evolutions format, Badoo is the best way to slow down, well, any deck. 10 damage is fine, but that's not what we're worried about here.
Yeah, I guess Tord only has that one Dreepy though, but happy enough with that Itchy Pollen to try and slow the game down enough that Tord continue getting into this game. As an Iono does get played here by Yasayuki's side. We did see an early concealed card as well, so he's already utilized that ability. He's just trying to look for ways to now get into the active spot.
The one Dreepy is awkward, I grant you. But if you know your opponent's not playing items, that kind of forces them to use their supporter to get set up, so the chances of being boss's orders become much lower under a Badoo lock. So I don't mind that risk so much, because with the Badoo lock, the chances are just much less high. What have we got? We've drawn into an energy. Have we drawn into an Archaludon? I don't know that we have.
But there's still no way to kind of maneuver out the active spot. We do see the Dialga V hit the board there as well, and it's just a pass over. Itchy Pollen doing its magic here, giving Tord just an extra turn to try and rebuild his board himself, as we do see the first Dracloak of this game to come down. Recon Directive, top two cards. We do see the Alakazam there and the Psychic Energy, I believe. But what else is available? We do have a Lance in hand, so could use that or utilize that to try and build out the board as well. Sure, would want to try and use some of those Arvens that are still hiding away again in the deck as well, Ross.
The one rare candy is prized. You've already evolved your Dreepy. You're not getting an attack off this turn, not a good relevant one anyway in terms of damage. This is a setup turn. So I don't mind Lance here, because you can grab yourself a Dragapult for next turn, guarantee that stage 2, and another couple of Dreepy. That's what I would personally go for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there might actually be one Dragapult EX in hand, so it might help to save his turn.
In that case, Draclo.
Exactly. It might help to save the choices there. Doesn't have to think too hard about it, and can just go maybe into that Dracloak and just, again, bring in that consistency. You know, it's a bit more of a passive turn once again, because he can't burst into a Dragapult EX with that rare candy. But he doesn't need to spend any time really bursting, because he can just Itchy Pollen Yasayuki's side of the board and just kind of limit what Yasayuki has access to.
But you'll notice he could have gone for a fourth Dreepy there. It's not prized. Chose not to. You're leaving a bench space open. That could be a Luminion to search to support a card. That could be a Pheasantipity. If Yasayuki starts taking prizes, you'll give it. It could be a Radiant Alakazam. Leaving a bench space open just to give those options. I love that Tord's done that. You've got enough of those dragons on the board. You don't need the fourth one yet.
Yeah, and I guess because there's only one Dracloak in hand as well, you know, if he doesn't go into another Dracloak, it's just going to be a Dreepy sat there for a little bit longer. As we do see here, is that Professor's Research being utilized by Yasayuki. Just trying to find a way here to get into the position. Does have an energy attachment to the Radiant Greninja. Does have Archaludon in hand now, so can potentially retreat. I believe there's more than enough energies in the discard pile now, following some of those concealed cards. And we're going to see an Assemble Alloy, I'm sure.
Wait, is there one or two?
But he could retreat the active to get the second one in.
Yes. I think you have to do that first. Make sure you've got that second energy. And it looks like that is what we're seeing. We see the retreat. Now there is 2 energy in the discard. Now we Archaludon. We use that ability. We get the 2 energy. We're ready to attack.
Do you think 220 is enough here?
I think that might KO Badoo. Now, In the previous game, we didn't take the Badoo, but this is a very different situation. You've got your Pokemon up. You need to start taking prizes. That is the only prize available. This is a point where you need to start taking prizes. Last game, it would have been a speculative poke when you're not set up and leave yourself open. That is not the case here.
Yeah, as we do see now a Nespal coming down from Tord's side, he's finally going to be able to utilize his own Pheasantipity EX, his own Flip the Script, see more cards. It's always important to have that level of consistency here. He has Recon Directives, he has Flip the Script. This is where Tord can find a position here where he can start trying to apply a little pressure from his side because he hasn't been able to sort of get a big attack off early because that rare candy. What did he just draw into, Ross? It might be that pink A-Spec.
It might be that pink A-Spec, that unfair stamp, and it is unfair. Unfair by name, unfair by nature. Both players shuffle their hands into the deck. You as a player that played it get 5 cards, your opponent gets 2. It really hurts and slows your opponent down. It was what we were worried about last game. The good news is Yasayuki does have a better set up this game, but look, we got a second Dracloak down, we got a Dragapult. We don't have the energy yet, but we do have an Earthen Vessel in hand. Here we go, and this is all we need. The attack is coming out this turn.
Yeah, it's all kind of coming together here as the Fire End is just a one choice here. Does he play the unfair stamp? I imagine he would, but he's going to try and target down something else first, limiting the options that Yasayuki might have access to, because what Yasayuki we're trying to do is just kind of rebuild his Archaludon EXs with those Professor Churros scenarios or anything like Scoop Up Cyclones. But here it's just going to be potentially just a swing away. But there's the unfair stamp. He's playing it, Ross. Here we go.
It comes down, and I love this. Essentially what Tord's doing is trying to play for the next couple of turns. If you hit Archaludon on the bench twice, it brings it into Phantom Dive range. So what you're trying to do here is essentially work on a multi-turn 4-5 prize thing. That's what you're going for, trying to take out both the big attackers. Problem is, if you do this, what if your opponent draws into Professor Turo? What if your opponent finds other ways around it? So what do you want to do? Limit their options. How do you do that? Unfair stamp.
Yeah, it feels very unfair to almost be playing like 2 supporters, as it were. It's hand disruption and the boss's orders. Incredible. But this is the way Tord's built his list. He's decided to play it. Still has Recon Directive to kind of continue to go into more cards as well. Has one more, it looks like, on the board. Tord's there alongside our overlay, of course, does utilize those little coins to kind of indicate for himself how the board is progressing. As you do see that collapsed stadium there available as well. Kind of another way to pseudo heal from your board or even remove liabilities from your board there.
Yeah, you limit your own bench to allow you to discard your own bench Pokemon that you don't want your opponent to go and KO. So we see a Buddy Buddy Poffin coming down here. He's got 1 bench space remaining. We've got a Badoo potentially could come down. It is being eyed up. Do we have a Dreepy available? We do not.
Yeah, no, not at the moment. It looks like maybe Tord's just considering his board state where he doesn't want to give up an easy prize like that Pheasantipity EX that's just kind of sat there at the moment. You know, it's well in range of a 220 Metal Defender attack as well. But, you know, he needs to just try and work out the game plan here because they'll be at some point utilizing that collapsed stadium just to kind of make sure he's not giving up easy prizes because it's just an easy target. Just sat there. You've used your Flip the Script. At the moment here, it's got the Origin Form, Dialga, V-Star in the active spot. So it just looks like he's just targeting it down to 200 damage to the active, 1 to the Duraludon, kind of putting it in 2 drop range. Oh, he's actually changed it around, 5 to the Duraludon there, bringing it down to 80 and just 10 onto the Archaludon EX.
Yeah, don't mind that at all. Remember, the damage can be further manipulated with that Radiant Alakazam,
Yep.
so the numbers do not have to stick how they are. But now we're in a very good position for Tord, getting lots of damage on the board, and Yasayuki's going, well, I do play 2 Professor Turo scenario. I do have options for heating up these Pokemon. They're the kind of things you're going to be looking for sooner rather than later. But how badly was Yasayuki hurt by the unfair stamp of Tord? That's one of the big questions right now.
Well, does have access with that Earthen Vessel. He's been able to grab a couple of Metal Energies from the deck, so thin out the deck, as it were, to give better options to maybe draw into here with the concealed cards. Does have Ultra Ball in hand as well, so maybe there's a couple of different options that are available. We do see these 2 cards being picked up. There's another energy, another Nest Ball. I don't think that's going to be too helpful in this scenario here. Would have been looking for something to try and reset that Dialga V-Star in the active spot. Nest Ball being played.
Yeah, Nespal coming down here, allowing you to go and get yourself a basic Pokemon of any description here. What are we looking for? Is it another Duraludon? I think that's probably a good option because, well, they evolve into Archaludon, and it is largely an Archaludon deck, so that's probably going to be a nice little option for you.
But it does look like this position here might have to kind of give up that Orange Form Dialga V-Star in the active spot. But it's choosing to play the Ultra Ball here, so it's going into another Archaludon EX. Could potentially get some energy onto the active and just kind of chip away at the Dragapult EX here. Maybe try and find a way to put it in a bit of range. I don't know, maybe sometimes a lot of players would also maybe hold on to Metal Energies, maybe kind of keep it for the Radiant Greninja to keep concealed cards. Because right now, I think he's playing with a no-card hand, Ross.
He is playing with a no-card hand. Professor Turo's scenario, getting that Dialga out the active would have been such a good play this turn. Attacking with the Archaludon, healing up Dialga, getting it ready to evolve again in the future. But no, not an option. We see 120. And look, that has put Dragapult into range of Archaludon. So the numbers here are working fine, but you are giving up your Dialga to do so.
Yeah, not typical of what you'd expect, because really you want to be using that Star Chronos when the opportunity presents itself. But in this scenario where Tord has already has ordered the Dialga V-Star into the active spot, being able to chip away here, there's no other extra energies on towards other Dracloaks right now, so he's going to get an energy attachment there, but it does mean he's likely to leave that Dragapult EX in the active spot. He's already seen that Tord is not playing that Sparkling Crystal, he's playing that Unfair Stamp, so there's no other way to kind of very quickly attack. Maybe he hasn't seen or noticed the Crispin in the deck as well. So there's certain good, plausible reasons why he's gone down this route for the time being. As you mentioned, it's bringing it into range is great in Yasayuki's spot.
Yeah, right now it is just, well, it's a good old-fashioned prize race, quite frankly, Alex. Both players have got some attackers. Both players are getting damage on the board. It is going to be first to six. The problem is Yasayuki's deck really wants to go out faster at the beginning than this. When Tord's deck starts rolling, you know, there's Dragon Pokemon, 320 HP, and it's partly that, and it's partly the extra damage on the bench. Tord is grabbing some extra prizes as the game goes along, while Yasayuki is really, it's just two-hit KOing Dragapult. Yes, you can grab the Pheasant Dipty at some point, but it really is just two-hit KOing Dragapult, whereas Dragapult has so many more options for taking out these smaller Pokemon. Right now, we're going to see the Dialga go down. That's a big thing. We're going to see some damage. Oh, we actually see Radiant Alakazam moving damage from... Oh, I love this. So here's what we see. Radiant Alakazam move 2 damage counters from Radiant Greninja onto Origin Form Dialga, leaving it with 60 damage remaining. Counter Catcher onto Duraludon gives a giant free prize turn, taking out the Duraludon and taking out the Dialga. And I didn't get a chance to mention it a minute ago, but I did notice when we saw 80 damage left on that Dialga, that is a key number if you're playing Radiant Alakazam. That is why Tord plays the card.
Yeah, it's so important to be following, and thanks for guiding us through that, Ross. It was so important to see just kind of that level of play from Tord to be able to manipulate damage and take a big free prize KO. Now, taking the lead, of course, he is in a situation here with that Dracula with 1 energy on the bench there, so he's prepping for the future turns. He's likely to be losing this Dragapult EX after being knocked out maybe by this Archaludon EX in the active spot as well. So Yasayuki has to respond here. Does have that Pheasant Dipty down now, so it has access to flip the script. One of those key things of maybe why Tord's playing Dragapult EX as well is being able to manipulate the damage to not actually allow, typically, flip the script to be popped off on your opponent's side of the board, because you can manipulate the damage movements and don't have to take knockouts. You can take multi-prize turns. But here, Yasayuki has an opportunity to see more cards.
Yeah, I don't think Tord's going to be too upset about this. Yes, you're absolutely right. You can sometimes delay that flip the script for a couple of turns. But if you take a big free prize turn, I think that's probably going to be okay. And here we do see the Archaludon taking out the Dragapult. We finally get that first big KO, the first non-Badoo KO of the game. But Tord's already rolling. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Tord evolves up, attaches an energy, gets an attack. If Yasayuki could get a big KO or 2 turns in a row, could potentially starve Tord of energy. but there's just nothing there without the Dagger on the bench to pull that play off.
No, absolutely. It looks like it's coming down to these last couple of turns for both our players. There's no real way to take 3 prizes in sort of 1 attack in this scenario, in this reality right now. But both players will be trying to utilize 2 more attacks to try and take this game 2 of this Swiss round 1 here, as Tor does evolve up to that Dragapult EX in the active position, ready to start swinging away with Phantom Dive once again. Actually just needs the energy. Oh, has the nice stretcher. There you go.
We're going to see 5 damage counters coming down onto that bench start Chaladon. That will bring it down to 200 damage into Phantom Dive range, and that means that Gusting next turn could get a double KO on the Archaladon there, could win the game. Yeah, because both Duraludon and Radiant Greninja have 130, so you can't 2-hit KO them with the residual damage from a Phantom Dive. So, I mean, you could play around with Radiant Greninjas. That would be another option to get that 3rd prize, taking out the active Archaladon. Maybe that's even a better option. Either way, Tord can set up for a win next turn.
One of those things that Tor's going to be mindful of is wherever he places those damage counters, Yasayuki's going to be having to think and target that Pokemon that's been damaged with one of his Professor Churro scenarios or Scoop Up Cyclone to try and basically nullify Tord's turn. So Tord has to be quite smart with this actual Phantom Dive play, putting the damage counters in a way where maybe he can further manipulate with Radiant Alakazam on his next turn, so that he can take a 3 prize turn potentially going forward. As we do see the boss's orders here, he's double checking how many cards are available in hand, maybe targeting one of those sort of vital Pokemon here. Just maybe taking the prize to push himself down to 2 prizes might not be a terrible idea either. But let's see where the direction Tord goes down. There's so many options because of the way Dragapult is able to manipulate damage with 200 from the Phantom Dive and 60 from the residual sort of damage counter placements.
Could KO the Pheasantipsy right now using Radiant Alakazam. Chooses instead to go for the Duraludon here. And I really like this because you're going down to 2 prizes, but essentially you can set up any number of KOs here. I mean, you could put 5 on the Archaladon, 1 on the Pheasantipsy. They're both in range. Yeah,
one of those other things that that Tord will also be removing from the actual play as well is any sort of Scoop Up Cyclones or Professor Churro scenario on those Archaladon EXs, because there's no other way to reboost the energy back onto the only one that has 3 energies right now. So if there's damage counters placed onto the other one as well, there's an opportunity there just to kind of limit the kind of assemble alloy ability that Yasayuki has access to. As we do see now the Phantom Dive knockout of this Duraludon in the active spot, 10 on the Pheasantipsy. We saw this in game 1 as well, 1 prize taken, and then the rest placed on that Archaladon EX there.
Yeah, and like I say, there were a lot of different options. You could have left the Archaladon in range. You did leave the Pheasantipsy in range. But with that Radiant Alakazam, you have other options. So, Tord's got 2 prize cards remaining. That Pheasantipsy seems like an enticing option if Tord can get any Gusting right now. We do see an evolution into the Archaladon, I believe? No. No, we're just using... No. We're using Earthen Vessel. The Archaladon were already there. We're just using Earthen Vessel, grabbing a couple of energy. But right now, you can attack with the active, which is out of range for now. But the question is, are you going to be able to get enough damage to get close enough to winning here? You're not taking a 3 prize turn.
Yeah, with Yasayuki's board, he's going to be wanting to not really have to go through this Dragapult EX, because there's no way to really take a big, quick, easy knockout on this, as we do see another Duraludon hit the field as well.
I don't know if it's going to happen, but we could see a double Radiant Alakazam play with the help of Professor Churro, and then 200 damage to the active Archaladon would be a KO. Double Radiant Alakazam with Professor Churro. That's how I want to see Tord end this second game if he is going to be our victor. Right now, we are eyeing up a boss's orders, but it's gone back to the hand.
Yeah, I'm glad you've been able to call that out, Ross. I was trying to lead us all the way there with the 6 damage placement counters. The kind of unique way that Tord has to manipulate those damage counters on Yasayuki's side of the board to basically enable unique potential plays like that. But let's see which direction Tord takes it. But of course, it's still Yasayuki's turn first. He's going to have to apply pressure from his own. I mean, if he can see that play and actually maybe take out that Radiant Alakazam as an option, because he's going to need to gust twice anyway with anything like a boss's orders. This is one of those decks that plays a heavy boss's orders line, similar to actually what Tord has, because he wants to be targeting
coming
down.
up.
Yeah, Easy knockout with 220 damage. Vezendipity knocked out. No more flip the script for the time being.
Do we have Boss? Do we have Professor Turo? We have an Ultra Ball. There is going away a Lance. Do we have a Luminion there? Which would be a little bit of an option. What are we going for instead? It's our old friend Blood Moon Ursaluna. We don't need any trickery. Blood Moon Ursaluna does 240 damage. That is enough to go and get the KO on the active there, taking those last couple of prizes, winning with Blood Moon and giving Torn a 2-0 victory in our round 1 feature match at the European International Championships 2025.